high warriors of willpower. What if I told you freedom isn't doing what you want, but doing what you must? Sounds insane, right? But this isn't just a thought. It's a truth most people run from their entire lives. Let's begin the story. Part 1. Are you truly free? Let me introduce you to Jason, 23 years old, full of fire and lost in smoke. For Jason, freedom used to mean no boundaries. Why set an alarm when you don't have a job? Why eat clean when junk tastes better? Why plan your life when you can just vibe? Every day was a blank page, but instead of painting a masterpiece, he doodled with distractions. He lived for night, parties, games, scrolling through endless feeds. No clocks, no calendars, just chaos, wrapped in the illusion of living free. He'd laugh when someone said, "Discipline is power." To him, discipline sounded like a prison sentence. But behind that laughter, something darker brewed. Jason wouldn't admit it out loud, but deep inside, his soul was aching. He felt that when he looked in the mirror and couldn't recognize the man he saw. He felt that when friends started moving forward in life, jobs, goals, progress, and he stayed stuck. He felt it when silence hit and there was no distraction strong enough to block the truth. Every night, his head hit the pillow with the same bitter whisper. I did nothing today. Again. And when the sun rose, he dreaded the morning. Not because of stress, but because there was nothing to wake up for. One night, after a particularly empty day, Jason sat on the floor of his messy apartment. Pizza boxes, dirty laundry, dim lights. He had money in the bank, but zero in motivation. He had followers online, but no one who truly knew him. In that silence, something cracked inside him. He whispered into the darkness. This doesn't feel like freedom. This feels like prison. That one sentence changed everything. A life without control isn't freedom. It's chaos in disguise. Think about that. You leave a garden unattended, and weeds take over. You leave your life unattended, and bad habits do the same. No one tells you that freedom without purpose is the most dangerous cage. Jason had been living like a prisoner dressed in party clothes. His chains weren't made of iron. They were made of excuses, comfort, laziness. He remembered the words of a mentor he once ignored. If you don't build discipline, life will discipline you, and it won't be gentle. That quote echoed in his mind like a thunderstorm. It hit him hard. He'd been running from discipline thinking it was control, when really he was running towards suffering without even realizing it. That night, Jason didn't sleep. He sat up and made a list, not of dreams, but of actions. Wake up at 6 a.m. Work out, even if it hurts. Learn something every day. Cut the crap food. Set boundaries with time. Say no to distractions. Tiny steps. Brutal honesty. No fluff. No fake motivation. He was done being a slave to comfort. Comfort is a slow death. Prefer pain if it leads to growth. Unknown warrior's code. And guess what? It was hell at first. Waking up early after years of sleeping till noon felt like torture. His body ached, his mind screamed, and everything inside him begged to go back. But every time that voice whispered, "Come on, just skip today," he shouted back, "I've skipped enough of my life already." That was his war cry. That was the new Jason. Discipline wasn't about being perfect. It was about showing up. It wasn't about controlling everything. It was about controlling yourself. And that control, that became his new freedom. Slowly, day by day, things began to shift. He wasn't motivated, he was committed. He didn't feel like doing it, he just did it. And that mindset, that became his armor. Discipline is choosing between what you want now and what you want most. Abraham Lincoln. Jason realized he wasn't giving up freedom. He was claiming it back. Because real freedom is saying no to what destroys you, saying yes to what builds you, creating a life you don't need a vacation from, looking in the mirror and feeling proud, not regret. He didn't need 100 people clapping for him. He needed one person to believe in him, and that person was finally him. So when people now ask him, "Are you free?" he smiles and says, "Finally, yes, because now I do what I must, not what I feel." And that is freedom. A life without control isn't freedom. It's chaos in disguise. Part 2. The moment that shook his soul. It was just another tired afternoon. The kind where the sun seemed too bright and the world too noisy. Jason was walking, earbuds in, head down, lost in thought. His playlist blasted music meant to distract him from the growing emptiness inside. But even music had started to lose its grip on him. And then he saw it. A dull, gray building, worn out by time, tucked between a bakery and a laundromat. No neon signs, no flashy promotions, just a cracked sign that read, "Iron House Gym." Jason would have ignored it any other day, but something tugged at him, a strange pull, like the universe whispering, "Look closer." He paused. Through the foggy glass windows, he saw something that hit him like a punch to the chest. A man, mid-40s, scarred, thick-built, soaked in sweat. His muscles trembled, but his eyes, laser-sharp. Every rep he lifted was brutal, but precise. Every breath was like a vow. No music, no selfies, no distractions. Just a man at war. Not with others, but with himself. It wasn't the muscles that shook Jason. It was the intensity, the focus, the discipline. He stood frozen, watching. This wasn't for show. This was real. There was no applause in that gym. No trophies. Just raw iron and raw will. And for the first time in a long time, Jason felt small, not weak, not hopeless, but humbled. That man wasn't just working out. He was sculpting his soul. Your body hears everything your mind says. Train both. Unknown. Jason couldn't look away. And in that haunting silence, something inside him cracked. It wasn't envy. It wasn't shame. It was the sudden realization that he'd been lying to himself. For years, Jason built a life around comfort. Late nights, junk food, escapism. And every time things got hard, he whispered to himself, "It's okay. You're young. Take it easy." But in that one moment, watching that man, Jason realized the truth. Comfort had never been his friend. It was his enemy in disguise. He had mistaken pleasure for peace. He had called distraction his therapist. And worst of all, he had buried purpose under a pile of lazy justifications. Jason stepped closer to the gym door, but didn't enter. He didn't need to, not yet. That image was already seared into his mind. It haunted him, not because it was intimidating, but because it was honest. It was the opposite of everything Jason had been. Pure, real, disciplined. Comfort is the enemy of progress. Growth lives in resistance. Marcus Aurelius. That night, Jason didn't scroll. He didn't binge. He sat on the edge of his bed in silence, letting the weight of that moment settle deep. And then he made a decision. No Instagram story, no hashtag, no announcement, just a vow, quiet and powerful. From today, I choose structure over chaos, purpose over pleasure, discipline over distraction. He wrote it down, in pen, on paper, no digital notes that could be deleted. That paper was taped to his mirror. The first thing he would see each morning, his new creed. The next morning, he woke up before his alarm. Not because it was easy, but because he refused to go back. He didn't hit the gym right away. He wasn't ready for the iron, but he started with push-ups on his bedroom floor. Sloppy, shaking, struggling after 10. But he did them. Then a cold shower. It felt like knives on his skin, but it woke his senses. Then a notebook. Page 1. Discipline is my new freedom. And beneath it, he wrote, I will not be comfortable in the cage I built myself. When you feel like quitting, remember why you started. Unknown. Jason knew this was just the beginning. The war hadn't even begun, but the soldier in him had awakened. Every cell in his body screamed for the old life, the comfort, the ease. But he silenced them with one truth. Comfort cost me everything. It cost him confidence. It cost him pride. It cost him presence. No more. His body wasn't ready. His mind wasn't either. But his soul was on fire. That was enough. So now, every morning began with resistance. Push-ups, runs, books instead of screens, silence instead of noise. Not for show, not to impress, but to rebuild. And every night, before sleeping, he whispered one line. The man I saw in that gym, I'll meet him again. But this time, I'll be on the other side of the glass. That vision, the scarred man, the silent war, the discipline, it became his anchor, his standard, his North Star. No more hollow pleasures, no more wasted days. Only purpose, only progress, only truth. You don't rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the strength of your discipline. Part 3. Chains that set him free. Jason didn't become a new man overnight. There were no fireworks, no epic transformation montage like in movies. What happened was quieter, but far more powerful. He simply started waking up at 5 a.m. Not because it was trendy, not because someone on YouTube told him to, but because he had finally understood something that most people never will. If you don't own your morning, you'll never own your life. That hour before sunrise became sacred. A battlefield of silence where he faced his demons before the world woke up. He didn't just stumble out of bed. He showed up for himself. Before the world could ask anything of him, Jason had already checked in with his purpose. He'd already sweated through a workout. He'd already written down his priorities. He'd already looked in the mirror and said, I am in control. His life became a system, not a guessing game. Each night, he planned the next day like a general preparing for war. Wake at 5. Hydrate. Stretch. Read for 30 minutes. Train hard. Eat clean meals. He prepped himself. Work in focus blocks. Meditate to reset. Sleep by 10. No shortcuts. No, I'll see how I feel. Just commitment. Just execution. And here's the paradox that most people don't get. The more structured his day became, the freer he felt. It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more, who is poor. Seneca. Jason had always feared the word discipline. It used to sound like chains, like limits. But now, those chains set him free. Free from guilt. Free from wasted hours. Free from the anxiety that came from a mind untamed. Free from the self-hate of not doing what he knew he was capable of. He realized something radical. Structure doesn't trap you. It protects your power. Every habit became a brick in the foundation of his new identity. He wasn't just trying to be better. He was becoming someone else entirely. He was becoming reliable, consistent, powerful. And yes, he lost things along the way. He lost friends, the ones who still lived for the weekends, who mocked his discipline and called him boring or too serious. He missed parties, nights that once felt like the peak of life, but now felt empty. He skipped the easy paths, the shortcuts, the temptations, the clickbait success formulas. But in exchange, he gained something rare. Clarity. That priceless, untouchable clarity. His mind, once foggy and scattered, was now a weapon. He no longer felt like life was slipping through his fingers. Now he grabbed each day by the throat and bent it to his will. You will never always be motivated, so you must learn to be disciplined. Jason stopped waiting for motivation. He didn't ask, do I feel like it? Anymore. He asked, does it align with who I'm becoming? Because now his actions were no longer about how he felt. They were about what he believed. And he believed in the mission, not just physical transformation, not just better habits, but building a life that he would be proud to pass on one day, one that screamed. This is what happens when you stop lying to yourself. Every morning, as he tied his shoes and headed out for a run, his body might have resisted, but his soul was on fire. He began to understand why few ever achieve greatness. Because discipline is painful. It's lonely. It's uncomfortable. It demands more than most are willing to give. But in that pain, he found something sacred. Peace. Real, grounded, unshakable peace. Not the kind that comes from a weekend trip. Not the fake calm of numbing your mind with screens. But the kind that comes from doing what you said you'd do, even when no one's watching. There is no pride in easy victories. Real pride comes from doing hard things consistently. Anonymous. And the fire inside Jason, it roared louder with every passing week. He was no longer seeking approval. He didn't crave validation. He didn't chase applause. He just chased the next level. And it wasn't always pretty. Some days he failed. He overslept. He slipped. He felt weak. But he didn't let failure own him. He used it. Every fall reminded him that he was still in the game, still fighting, still moving forward. Because discipline wasn't about being perfect. It was about being unbreakable. And that realization changed everything. Now, when people looked at Jason, they didn't see the guy who skipped parties. They didn't see the guy who ate plain meals or carried a journal around. They saw someone different, someone they couldn't quite define. Because Jason had become something rare, a man on a mission. And that's the kind of energy you can't fake. Freedom isn't found in escape. It's earned through discipline. That was no longer just a quote on his wall. It was the blueprint of his life. Part 4. Turning steel into spirit. Months passed. Jason didn't count the days anymore. He owned them. What once felt like a battle had become second nature. He no longer had to drag himself through routines. He moved with rhythm, with precision, with purpose. He became a machine, but not cold or mechanical. He was alive in every rep, every step, every moment. Not robotic, but disciplined to the bone. His choices weren't forced anymore. They were automatic, driven by the fire that now lived inside him. He had rewired his brain. Discipline had stopped being an external force. Now it was his identity. First you make your habits, then your habits make you. John C. Maxwell. Every morning, his alarm still screamed at 5 a.m., but he no longer hated it. He welcomed it, because that sound meant one thing, another opportunity to rise. His morning rituals weren't trendy anymore. They were sacred. Cold showers that sharpened his mind. Journaling that cleared the noise. Training sessions that built more than muscle. They built mindset. Deep work sessions where the outside world disappeared. Jason had become the kind of man who no longer needed reminders. He was the reminder. His presence spoke louder than any words. One afternoon, while walking home from the gym, his phone buzzed. A name popped up from the past. Tyler, one of the guys from his old circle. The party crew. The live in the moment gang. He answered, "Bro, you disappeared. Where the hell you been?" Jason smiled. Not out of arrogance, but peace. Building the version of me I was always meant to be, he replied calmly. There was silence on the other end. A confused laugh. Man, you sound like a monk or something. Jason chuckled. Nah, just finally living instead of running. They didn't get it. And for the first time in his life, he didn't care. Because Jason wasn't living for likes anymore. He wasn't living for weekend approval or group validation. He had stopped outsourcing his worth. Now, he lived for purpose. And that purpose, it burned in him like steel forged in fire. Those who danced were thought to be insane by those who could not hear the music. Friedrich Nietzsche. That same week, he launched a side hustle. Nothing fancy, no grand launch, just a service, helping busy professionals build structure into their chaotic lives. Morning planning, goal setting, fitness accountability, mindset building. What started with 2 clients turned into 5. 5 turned into 10. Word spread, not because Jason had fancy degrees, not because he promised instant results, but because he was real, and people can smell authenticity from a mile away. Jason didn't preach. He lived what he taught. He became a symbol in his town, not because he was the smartest or the strongest, but because he showed up every damn day, rain or shine, energy or fatigue, motivation or not. He became the one constant in a world addicted to inconsistency. Consistency is what transforms average into excellence. Tony Robbins. People started asking questions. Man, what's your secret? How do you stay so focused? Weren't you the party guy a year ago? Jason never gave long speeches. He'd just say, I got tired of breaking promises to myself. Because that was the truth. He hadn't just changed his habits. He had changed his standards. And now, he refused to negotiate with his old self. He refused to go back to a life where pleasure was a drug and time was a joke. He refused to live another day without purpose. Some people clapped for him. Some rolled their eyes. Some watched silently, unsure how to react. But Jason didn't need an audience. He was no longer performing. This was his real life now. Every time he laced up his shoes for a run, every time he said no to cheap dopamine, every time he showed up when it was easier to quit, he built something bigger than muscle. He built something rarer than success. He built a spirit made of steel. Let others be soft. You stay solid. Epictetus. And the best part? He wasn't done. Not even close. Jason knew this was only the beginning of his journey. There were higher mountains to climb, bigger storms to face, deeper versions of himself to uncover. But now he had the armor. Now he had the vision. Now he had something most men never find in their entire lives. Control of his thoughts, of his time, of his energy, of his story. And that made him unstoppable. Discipline is the difference between what you want now and what you want most. Part 5. Real freedom has a cost. Jason stood behind the curtain, palms calm, breath steady. The audience beyond the stage buzzed with anticipation. Not long ago, he'd have crumbled under pressure. But now, this was home. His voice had found its power, not from speaking louder, but from living louder. Discipline had sculpted a man out of a former ghost. He stepped forward, lights at his face. Hundreds of eyes stared back, and he smiled, not out of arrogance, but because he recognized something in the crowd, the same lost hunger he once carried. These people weren't weak. They were untuned instruments desperate for rhythm. And Jason had become the beat. I know what you're feeling, he began. Like life is too much and somehow too little. Like every day is heavy but meaningless. I've been there. Let me tell you how I got out. He spoke of early mornings not glamorous, not Instagram worthy, just raw silence at 4:45 a.m. when the world still slept. He told them about journaling in the dark, running in the rain, eating bland meals, skipping distractions, failing alone, and then rising every time more solid than the last. Discipline hurts, but so does staying the same. Choose your pain wisely. People clapped, but Jason wasn't chasing applause. He was planting truth in minds dulled by dopamine and distraction. He wasn't there to be liked. He was there to liberate. His own life was a sharp contrast now. The days weren't softer, just sharper. He didn't waste time debating whether to show up. Showing up had become non-negotiable. His calendar wasn't a prison. It was a shield. Structure didn't choke his spirit. It directed it. The price. High. He'd paid it in full. Missed weddings. Skipped parties. Sacrificed comfort. Lost friends. Watched people mock him behind digital curtains. But none of it shook him. Why? Because his mission had become louder than their opinions. His thoughts trained like soldiers. He didn't allow complaints to rent space in his mind. Only solutions. He told his mints, freedom isn't lounging all day with zero responsibilities. That's laziness dressed as liberty. Real freedom is earning your peace. With sweat, with silence, with sacrifice. Jason mentored people from all walks, burnout execs, lost teenagers, single mothers, ex-convicts. And every time his message was simple. Structure is a weapon, not a cage. He remembered one man, a 36-year-old, who felt too late to start. Jason looked him in the eyes and said, "The moment you take control is the moment the clock starts working for you, not against you." His mornings still began before the sun, not because he had to, but because that was his edge. While others dreamed, Jason built. While others scrolled, Jason studied. And every hour, every block of time was accounted for not in obsessive control, but in deep respect for life's limited minutes. He wasn't trying to be extraordinary anymore. He was trying to be fully used up by the time he left this world. He'd seen what undisciplined lives looked like. People drowning in freedom, suffocating under choices, paralyzed by comfort. No direction, just drifting. He refused to be that again. There were days he didn't feel like showing up, but he showed up anyway. There were temptations sleeping in, skipping the gym, scrolling mindlessly, ordering junk food. But he had built a shield of habits so thick, weak moments couldn't penetrate strong systems. He told his tribe, "You can either live for now or live for forever. One fades, one fuels. Pick." Jason didn't worship motivation. Motivation was fleeting. He worshiped discipline because discipline doesn't care how you feel. It just demands action. His message was radical to many. He wasn't offering hacks or shortcuts. He was offering war against your weaker self. And every day, you either win that war or surrender quietly and call it balance. He remembered the early version of himself, the drifter, the victim, the excuse machine. That man was dead, buried beneath the bricks of hard choices and silent mornings. In his city, people started calling him the wake-up call, not because he shouted, but because his life was proof. Proof that you don't need perfect circumstances. Proof that you don't need approval. Proof that you don't need to be special. You just need to start and not stop. Today, Jason is still at war, still rising early, still stretching limits, still bleeding into his journal, still saying no to distractions, still earning his clarity. And he'll be the first to tell you, discipline doesn't promise comfort. It promises power. And once you taste that power, the power to rule yourself, everything else feels fake. He ended his talk with fire in his chest. If you're tired of drifting, tired of waiting, tired of watching, then stop lying to yourself. Freedom isn't found in doing less. It's found in doing what's necessary, especially when it's hard. Pick up your damn sword, carve your path, and walk like a warrior. The crowd erupted, not for the speaker, but for what he represented. The possibility that their lives, too, could be forged into weapons of purpose. Jason walked off stage not lighter, not prouder, but clearer. He had paid the cost, and now he was truly free. Discipline is your sword. Pick it up, use it, and cut through every excuse holding you back. With that said, thanks for watching, and until next time.